Hi, my name is Alexandra Baradelli, and this is my journal one for History of Rock and my musical biography. My music listening habits were heavily influenced by my experience as a dancer for the first 18 years of my life. Throughout this time, I would primarily experience music as a product of routine, mostly pop music, hip hop, and disco. As I began to listen to music on my own, I naturally gravitated toward pop music, namely Ariana Grande. In my later teenage years, I leaned into my interest in musical theater, specifically Anais Mitchell's Hadestown. In my college career and most recently, I've stuck close to jazz and blues type music, and now I'm very into Ray and her music. As a dancer, I mostly had training in street jazz and hip hop, which led to an interest in pop music. I remember joining Ariana Grande's fandom during her primetime Cat Ear era, precisely when she released Dangerous Woman in 2016. I was barely a teenager at this point, so I don't really think I had a grasp of scandalous sex, rebellion, and self-pleasure that Ariana sings about, but I find Dangerous Woman looking back on it a bit generic in terms of commenting on sex and love. And after listening again, I found its energy to be a little scattered throughout, but at the same time, each one can be considered some form of dance music, either with an upbeat tone, like Be Alright, or more sensual, like Dangerous Woman. I don't think this album appropriately displays Ariana Grande's vocals and relies heavily on production for some upbeat tempos. I still recall that my favorite song from Dangerous Woman was Be Alright because of the kind of empowerment and spirit it would offer me when I listened, compared to some more of the sexual songs on the album, like Dangerous Woman or Side to Side. Be Alright is more straightforward and a lighter, more upbeat tune, especially fitting for a young listener like me at the time. Be Alright can be relatable for a person thinking about their own future, regardless of what type of relationship they are fostering or hoping for. So at this point, I can say with certainty I would listen to this song and doing the voguing like she does in the music video and in live performances. And I would listen to this on my boombox with my friends and going to and from dance in the car. But I had the CD version of Dangerous Woman. So in high school, I was still exposed to a lot of music from my dance classes, but I commuted to high school about an hour each way. So I was kind of in that earbud era where I just started exploring new music. My Spotify, I remember being extremely scary, where it had everything from Hans Zimmer's Interstellar score to Billie Eilish, Frank Sinatra, and Justin Timberlake. So it was kind of all over the place. But growing up in Brooklyn and commuting to Manhattan for school exposed me to some of the best live theater. My little sister is actually an actress. She toured with Irving Berlin's White Christmas for 2 seasons. So I would work with her when she was auditioning, practicing sides and songs with her. She primarily sings opera now, but she would sing a lot of musical theater. So we would go see shows for some practice sometimes. So living in New York alongside my family's communal interest in musical theater, I was fortunate enough to go and see a lot of these musicals. So in the summer of 2019, I saw Anais Mitchell's Hadestown for the first time. And honestly, to be completely frank, this musical changed my life. It's certainly a different experience going to see it. And I know, Professor, you brought it up in class that you saw it and it is complete masterpiece. I think you said you saw it. But when I saw it for the first time, it's more like experiencing some kind of transcendence. It's kind of like you read about it in philosophy, but this is something you truly experience. And I can say with great certainty it's one of the greatest masterpieces of all time. I've seen it 3 times since, and I listened to the 2017 cast album and the 2019 original Broadway cast album all of the time. And while it would be a essay in itself to comment on my favorite of the two, I would recommend reading Mitchell's book, Working on a Song, The Lyrics of Hadestown, if you haven't already. But Hadestown, as I learned in lecture and reading the textbook, it is entirely reminiscent of folk, jazz, and New Orleans blues. So when I first saw Hadestown, I didn't know what the myth of, I barely knew the myth of Hades and Persephone. But looking back on it and having my education actually in classics now, I think the song that most encapsulates the show's essence and my feelings towards it is Epic 3. So as you know that there are three epics in the show, and this is the last one where Orpheus And I'm thinking of the original Broadway cast recording here. So Reeve Carney finally finishes his love song based on the tune like la 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 la. So that's in all the epics and kind of like scattered throughout the show. And so this epic begins just as the other ones do. And it's giving the same formula as country blues, where we have a solo singer and just his guitar. And throughout the song, it's really just Orpheus singing, and I'll get to it, but we get the chorus in the middle. So this third version is different because Orpheus is performing it for Hades in an attempt to let him leave with his wife Eurydice. So the same way that Hades reacts to the first time Orpheus sings that melody, la la la, is the same way I feel as a listener that that melody and this song, this entire album kind of hits a part of the soul that is so deep that you just like feel so much for him. So as a storytelling device, each verse builds off the other and about midway through the story climaxes. And this is when Orpheus highlights the point in Hades and Persephone's love story where Hades knew he'd fallen in love. And that's when he says he begins the la 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 melody. This la 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 melody equals love for Hades and Persephone. And it's kind of at a point where words fail and he just have to has to sing this beautiful melody. So this is compared to the other epics, this is the longest version of it, and it gets the chorus involved, the chorus of workers involved, which is a distinctly Greek tragedy element, which is great in itself, and that's a whole nother conversation. But we get this kind of like out of body experience where they're all singing the melody. And after that, so like that's the climax of the song, and Orpheus continues to tell that Hades is not in it anymore with Persephone. Like he's not in love as he used to be. So he's trying to remind him that about this melody. So I found a sense of hope in Ariana Grande's Be Alright. And I found in my efforts of finding myself in high school and college, I gravitated towards like Hadestown a lot because I think it's the same but different. It's definitely a more mature pursuit of finding hopefulness in music. But I think through myth here, Hadestown questions our world and wants us to have faith in our world. And my favorite quote from this musical is when Hermes says about Orpheus, you could see how the world could be in spite of the way that it is. That's from All I've Ever Known introduction. So I've often struggled with seeing the world as it is, especially as Hadestown is comments on a lot of politics, both explicitly and implicitly, and chance and why we build the wall and all of that. But it is a mature way of asking us to hone in on our hopefulness for the world. So I often return to, I still listen to it all of the time, but I kind of feed into the more R&B and jazz. I find that it's a little bit more comforting. Um, so right now I'm into Ray. I've been listening to a lot of her work, and in her most recent album, My 21st Century Blues, she gives us her fresh and soulful voice with extremely talented lyricism. I think she is a great songwriter, and that's kind of where most of her work seems to have been in the past, and I'm so happy that she's getting the chance to be a solo artist. So you can tell that Ray is a product of 40s and 50s female jazz singers like Ella Fitzgerald, and she's commented a lot on that in the past, and especially how she dresses too. So this album utilizes Ray's strong and soulful voice and mixes these traditional blues sounds with interesting musical engineering. So in my senior year, R&B is quite comforting, just like the way it makes me feel. And the lyrics of Ray are often dealing with love and relationships, and it's kind of touching on how I'm balancing life relationships and my own work and how I want that to look in my own life and what type of person I want to be. So I think I've gravitated towards her for the moment. So in the past, I've considered myself hyper independent and I struggle with balancing my relationships. I've tried to invest the best of my energy into other people. And when I'm thinking about this and in my own relationships with friends and others, I think that the song Worth It is a great consideration in how we ought to offer ourselves and spend our time and energy on romantic relationships, which is something most of us can relate to, but also all types of relationships like platonic too. So, similar to my other two music choices, this song expresses a sense of hopefulness in the future. So, interestingly, as I've reflected on my music throughout the years, they all boil down to listening for hopefulness, which is something I don't think anyone thinks about when they're just listening to music on the daily. So now I use music to enter a subliminal space, particularly with noise canceling headphones. I put them in to kind of de-stress and find like a sense of reflection and more profound meaning. So Hadestown and Ray offer more like reflective and profound meaning than Ariana Grande does. I think at the time, as like a younger girl, just like in my teenage years, that was perfectly fine. But now I'm gravitating towards more things that like are hard hitting for me and kind of a little deeper, both in like the music itself and also the lyricism. So while these are some of the most critical artists throughout my life, I wanted to just make a note about instrumental music, which is something extremely special to me. And I know that you said don't write about classical music, but I just wanted to make a quick note that throughout all of these periods, I also use instrumental music, mostly from movie soundtracks, like the Interstellar soundtrack, most recently Oppenheimer too, that there are some songs that without words also offer a sense of comfort and hopefulness. And one of my favorites, I think that what the song that brought me into listening to instrumental music and contemporary classical music is Mac Richter's On the Nature of Daylight. So it speaks to hopefulness without lyrics, which is a gift and a power in itself. And so every day I cancel the outside world. I do this every day to create a sacred space where it's just me and music. And I guess I could say it offers me hope for the current moment and the future. And thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed.